I'm Sabrina, 32 years old, and never in my wildest dreams did I think my family would betray me. Not once, but twice. Imagine this: 5 years of silence, and suddenly they show up at my door. Suitcases in hand, they waltzed in like they owned the place. My father's piercing eyes locked onto mine, and his cold words echoed through the air like thunder. "You do not even have a family. We will take this house." I felt the world tilt beneath me. No shouting, no begging. Just a deep breath as I grabbed my phone, dialed 3 numbers, and fought back tears. If you're watching this video, drop a comment about where you're tuning in from. Trust me, you won't want to miss how I clawed my way out of the ultimate betrayal, from the very people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Growing up in suburban Pennsylvania, my family looked picture-perfect from the outside. My father, Richard, was the authoritative bank manager, all crisp suits and a briefcase that seemed permanently glued to his hand. My mother, Diane, was the hardworking nurse, always putting in long shifts yet somehow keeping our home spotless. Then there was my brother, Brian, the golden child. 3 years older, he basked in their spotlight while I was left in the shadows. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house, nothing extravagant, just your classic American family trying to get by. But beneath that shiny surface lay complex family dynamics that shaped my reality. From an early age, it was clear Brian was the star. His mediocre grades were celebrated, while my stellar achievements went unnoticed, just part of the status quo. When he got into state university on a mere partial scholarship, my parents threw him a huge party, gifting him a brand new car, sacrificing most of their savings to shield him from debt. Meanwhile, I was told, "Sabrina, you'll need to work part-time jobs for college." What was so wrong with me? Why did I have to fight for every single ounce of respect? The scent of betrayal hung heavy in the air, but it was also a chance to rise. Could I break free from the family narrative that held me captive? Would I find my way to independence and love amidst the ashes of my broken trust? Only time would tell. By 16, I was juggling school and 20 hours a week at the local diner, serving pancakes and burgers. Every penny counted. I was acing my classes and diving into extracurriculars, yet there was never a whisper about prestigious universities for me. The message was crystal clear. Brian was the golden child, the investment. I was just an afterthought. But there was one person who saw me differently. My grandmother, Margaret. She lived an hour away in a cozy cottage surrounded by a garden that felt like a fairy tale. Every summer, while Brian basked in sports camps funded by my parents, I spent 3 weeks with her. Those weeks were my escape. "Never let anyone tell you what your worth is," she'd say, her hands weathered from years of hard work guiding mine in the soil. "Only you decide that." Grandma Margaret had raised 3 kids mostly on her own after losing my grandfather when my mom was just 12. She worked as a seamstress, putting all her children through college. Her strength became my guiding light, especially when home felt like a cage. As college loomed, the pressure from my parents grew unbearable. My mom insisted I follow her path into nursing. "It's a stable profession, Sabrina. You'll always have work," she'd say, ignoring my lack of interest. My dad chimed in. "Creative careers are for those with family money." They didn't see the spark ignited in me during my junior year. My art teacher, Miss Winters, had discovered my passion for graphic design, introducing me to digital design programs. Could I break free from their expectations? Would I find the courage to pursue my dreams? The scent of rain lingered in the air, a reminder that change was coming. I could feel it, the winds of transformation whispering my name. I took to them immediately, staying late after school to work on projects and entering local competitions. When I won a regional design award, my parents dismissed it as a nice hobby, but not a real career path. The tension reached its peak during my senior year when college applications were due. I applied to the local community college with a strong design program as well as several affordable state schools with arts programs. When the acceptance letters came in, my parents refused to even consider contributing to my education unless I switched my major to nursing or business. "We are not wasting money on an art degree," my father stated firmly at dinner the night after I received my acceptances. "If you want to throw away your future, you can pay for it yourself." I looked to my mother for support, but she just stared at her plate. Brian, home from college for the weekend, smirked from across the table. "Maybe you should listen to Dad, Sabrina. Not everyone is cut out for a real career." That night, I cried myself to sleep, but the next morning, I made my decision. I would attend the community college work full-time and pursue my design degree no matter what. When I announced this at breakfast, my father simply shrugged and said, "Your life, your mistake." I graduated high school with honors and moved into a tiny apartment with 2 roommates while attending community college. I worked nearly 40 hours a week between a coffee shop job and a retail position at the mall, all while maintaining a 3.8 GPA in my design classes. I visited Grandma Margaret whenever I could, drawing strength from her unwavering belief in me. After 2 years of community college, I transferred to a state university to complete my bachelor's degree in graphic design. By then, I was barely speaking to my parents. Cold cafeteria tiles pressed against my thin flats as I stood there, diploma clutched tight. The sharp tang of acrylic flowers mixed with the distant, stale scent of gym mats. Cheers echoed for strangers' names, not mine. Grandma Margaret's voice, frail yet clear. "You did it, honey," cut through the ache, her warm, veined hand squeezing mine. The sting of absence burned deeper than any applause. My heart mapped the divide between belonging and yearning, a line traced by her smile. Our interactions were limited to obligatory holiday visits. My father would ask pointed questions about my income potential, while my mother slipped me $20 bills like I was still a child, whispering, "In case you need to eat." Brian, my brother, had graduated and secured a job at a financial firm, following in our father's footsteps. Every family gathering became a stage for his success, a subtle reminder of my perceived failure. "Brian just got a promotion," my mother would announce proudly. "He's looking at buying a condo downtown." The unspoken comparison hung in the air like a heavy cloud. By the time I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I was 22 and hadn't lived at home for 4 years. I attended my graduation ceremony alone. My parents had chosen to attend a conference related to Brian's work instead. Grandma Margaret, now using a walker due to arthritis, was the only family member in the audience. Her proud smile as I walked across the stage meant more than 1,000 absent relatives. With my degree finally in hand, I made the decision to move to Philadelphia for better job opportunities. The design scene there was thriving, and I had secured an internship that could lead to full-time employment. The night before I left, I had dinner with Grandma Margaret. "I'm scared," I admitted as we shared pie on her porch. "What if they're right and I fail?" She took my hand in hers, her blue eyes sharp despite her 82 years. "Sabrina, the only true failure is living someone else's dream. You follow your heart, and I will always be here if you need a soft place to land." With those words echoing in my mind, I packed my car the next morning and drove toward my future. I was determined to prove that I could succeed on my own terms, even if my family refused to believe in me. My first 2 years in Philadelphia were challenging, but rewarding. I transitioned from my internship to a junior designer position at a small marketing agency. Every late night spent sketching ideas and every coffee-fueled brainstorming session brought me closer to my dreams. I was finally carving out my own identity, one design at a time. But the shadows of my past still lingered, reminding me of the family I had left behind. Would they ever see me for who I truly was? Would I ever find the unconditional love I craved? The journey was just beginning, and I was ready to face whatever came next. The pay was modest, but I was building a portfolio and making connections in the industry. I shared a 2-bedroom apartment in a somewhat shabby neighborhood with Jessica, a teacher I met through a roommate-finding app. We became fast friends, turning our small apartment into a cozy home with thrift store finds and DIY projects. I called Grandma Margaret weekly and visited when I could. My contact with my parents dwindled to obligatory birthday calls and tense Thanksgiving visits. Brian had been promoted again and had purchased that downtown condo he had been eyeing. My mother never failed to mention it whenever we spoke. Then, 5 years ago, everything fell apart. The recession hit our industry hard. The marketing agency I worked for lost several major clients in the span of 2 months. One Monday morning, we all arrived to find the doors locked and a notice of bankruptcy taped to the window. Just like that, I was unemployed. I immediately began freelancing, reaching out to previous clients and applying for any design position I could find. But everyone was cutting budgets, and freelance designers were among the first expenses slashed. My savings, meager to begin with, dwindled rapidly as I continued paying rent and buying groceries. Jessica helped where she could, covering utilities and sharing her teacher's lounge leftovers, but she was hardly flushed with cash herself. After 3 months of sparse work and mounting bills, I received an eviction warning. I had paid partial rent for 2 months, but the landlord's patience had run out. Jessica was moving in with her boyfriend the following month, and I had no way to cover the full rent on my own. Panic set in as I realized I was weeks away from homelessness. With nowhere else to turn, I swallowed my pride and called my parents. The phone rang 4 times before my mother answered with a distracted, "Hello, Mom. It is Sabrina," I said, my voice already trembling. "I need help." I sat in my car, the rain drumming a relentless rhythm on the roof. Each drop mirrored the tightness in my chest, a mix of dread and hope. I'd always pictured this moment differently. A family reunion filled with warm embraces, not an unwanted return. Their house loomed in front of me, a fortress of expectations I felt too small to breach. Would they even care about the struggles I'd faced? Taking a deep breath, I stepped out, the scent of wet earth mingling with anxiety in the air. As I knocked on the door, an uncomfortable silence stretched before it swung open. Richard stood there, his eyes scanning me like I was a marketing report gone horribly wrong. "Sabrina," he said, the warmth absent from his voice. I could feel his judgment wrap around me, cold and suffocating. "Dad, I lost everything." The words barely escaped my lips before Diane appeared behind him, her eyes mirroring that emotional distance I'd grown used to. "What do you need?" she asked, and I expected a lifeline, something to ease the storm within. Instead, it felt more like an interrogation. Just then, my phone buzzed, startling me. When I looked down, my heart dropped. A message from Brian. Suddenly, Betrayal was alive and breathing. The screenshots spoke louder than words. They'd shown me my father's deceit. He was lying about the finances, using them like a shield to protect his eldest son, Brian, who remained their favored child. I realized Brian had been siphoning their support behind my back, brighter promises for him and shadows for me. As the living room's lamplight flickered, it cast ominous shadows over my once clear path, distorting everything I thought I understood about family. "Sabrina," Richard's voice cut through my thoughts cold as the autumn wind. "You've made your choices." Every muscle in my body tensed and the urge to scream bubbled beneath the surface. I had battled for my independence, only to be met with disdain. "This isn't about Brian," I finally shouted, my voice shaking from the weight of unshared truths. The words hung in the air between us, raw and unresolved. "Brian is our priority," Richard asserted, as if that should ease my pain, the obvious favoritism slapping me like a cold wave. I went quiet, the injustice twisting in my gut. What happened to my family, I wondered? The warmth, the love. Where had it gone? Maybe it had always been an illusion, a narrative crafted while I drifted farther away. As I stared into Richard's impassive gaze, something shifted within me. No more waiting in their shadows. If I lost everything, then I was ready to fight for something real. Maybe unconditional love didn't lie in that house. Perhaps it was waiting beyond the rain, beyond the trust shattered by lies, in the strength I'd find within myself. And as I stood there, resolved yet trembling, I realized it was time to reclaim my story. The rain tapped against my car like a ticking clock, each drop intensifying my anxiety. Through the fogged windows I caught glimpses of my family inside, the glow of the TV illuminating their silhouettes. I took a deep breath, heart racing, and lingered for what felt like a lifetime, gathering strength. Finally, I stepped out, wringing my hands around the frayed strap of my bag. I rang the doorbell, and my father answered. Surprise turned to disapproval as he scrutinized me. The mess I was, the desperation in my eyes. "Sabrina, what are you doing here?" he asked, tone sharp like the chill of the autumn air. "Dad, I lost my apartment," I implored. "Just a few weeks. Please let me stay." But he just stared past me, dismissively eyeing my car, crammed with my life. "This is exactly what happens with these artistic careers. Instability," he said, cutting me off. "What do you mean?" I shot back, my voice wavering. "I'm not homeless. I need family right now." But before I could plead further, my mother emerged, her expression hardening as Richard stated coldly, "Our daughter seems to have found herself homeless." A wave of rejection surged through me. "I just need support." Richard crossed his arms, his authority suffocating. "You chose your path. Now you face the consequences." Stunned, I felt the weight of his words. I barely managed to say, "You can't just cast me off." But he interrupted, his voice implacable. "You chose to ignore our guidance. Don't expect our support now." With that, the door closed, leaving me drenched on the porch, rain drenching my jacket, heart aching. I watched their shadows fade behind the curtains, hoping for a change of heart, but the silence was deafening. I trudged back to my car where the weight of solitude settled in. Eventually, I drove to a Walmart parking lot, sinking into the seat, $25 to my name and no one to turn to. I reached out to Brian, my brother, shooting texts into the void, but no reply came. The tightness in my chest grew heavier. Alone on that grim night, I realized I was fighting a battle of my own. For 2 weeks, I lived in my car, showering at a gym where I had a membership, and using library computers to search for jobs and apartments. I continued calling my parents, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails that were never returned. One night, I drove past their house and saw Brian's car in the driveway. The entire family was together, excluding me. It was the lowest point of my life. I felt completely abandoned without a home or family to turn to. The people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had shut me out when I needed them. Most, all because I had dared to follow my own path rather than the one they had chosen for me. On a particularly cold November morning, I was sitting in a corner of a local coffee shop nursing a single cup of tea I had purchased to justify using their free Wii. I had been there for hours searching for design gigs and affordable housing options. My appearance had deteriorated over the weeks of living in my car. My clothes were wrinkled from being stored in garbage bags, and despite my best efforts at the gym showers, I looked noticeably disheveled. I was so focused on my laptop that I did not notice someone approaching until they spoke. Sabrina Wilson. I looked up to see Eleanor Garcia, a former colleague from the marketing agency. She was dressed in a smart pika coat and holding a to-go coffee cup, looking exactly like the successful professional I had failed to become. Eleanor. "Hi," I said, immediately self-conscious about my appearance. "I thought that was you. I have been trying to reach you. The company email addresses all died when the agency closed." She slid into the chair across from me, either not noticing or politely ignoring my unkempt state. "How have you been? Are you working somewhere new?" I considered lying, maintaining some facade of success, but I was too exhausted for pretense. Not exactly. I have been freelancing, but it has been really slow. Actually, I am kind of between places right now. Eleanor's expression shifted from casual friendliness to concern. Between places, as in housing? I nodded, fighting back tears of embarrassment. It has been a rough few months. Eleanor leaned forward, lowering her voice. Sabrina, are you living in your car? The direct question broke through my remaining composure. I nodded again, unable to speak as tears spilled down my cheeks. Eleanor immediately moved her chair closer and put a hand on my arm. Why did not you reach out to any of us? The whole team has been checking in with each other since the closure. I did not want anyone to know how badly I was failing, I admitted. Everyone else seemed to land on their feet. Eleanor shook her head. Trust me, everyone struggled. I was unemployed for 6 weeks before I found something. She paused, studying my face. When was the last time you ate a proper meal? The question made me realize I could not remember. I had been surviving on granola bars and fast food dollar menu items when I could afford them. Come on, Eleanor said, standing up. Pack your stuff. You're coming with me. Before I could protest, she had helped me gather my laptop and bag. She led me to her car, insisting I leave mine in the coffee shop parking lot temporarily. 30 minutes later, we were sitting in her warm apartment while she made sandwiches and soup. After I had eaten, she showed me to her spare bedroom. It is not much, but it has a real bed, and it is yours for as long as you need it, she said, putting fresh towels on the dresser. I was overwhelmed by her kindness. I cannot accept this, Eleanor. We were just co-workers. We were a team, she corrected me. And now we are friends. That is what friends do. She sat on the edge of the bed. Besides, I might have a job opportunity for you. Eleanor explained that her boyfriend Michael ran a small design studio focusing on web development. They needed someone to assist with graphic elements and user interface design. The pay was modest, but it was steady work. Sabrina stood in Eleanor's guest room, surrounded by half-packed boxes. The sunlight dimmed, casting shadows that mirrored her turmoil. Her phone felt cold in her palm, a stark contrast to the warmth of the moment. Nancy's voice trembled on the other end, hinting at secrets buried beneath her concern. Sabrina's heart raced. Not only had she neglected her grandmother, but Nancy's next words shattered her world. Margaret's final wish was to see Richard, not her. Had she been blind to her own story all along? The weight of betrayal tightened around her chest. Richard, her father, had always been authoritative, dismissive, and controlling. He ruled their family with an iron fist, enforcing his own version of reality. Sabrina had fought for respect and belonging, but it felt like a losing battle. She had been the resilient one, the determined one. But was it all in vain? Diane, caught in the middle, was emotionally distant, yet diligent, always supporting Richard's decisions. She wanted to maintain the family image, but at what cost? The tension in their home was palpable, a constant reminder of the imbalance. Brian, the favored son, basked in privilege, unchallenged and entitled. He represented everything Sabrina resented, a stark contrast to her struggle for independence. As she sat in the hospital room, holding her grandmother's frail hand, the scent of antiseptic filled the air. Grandma Margaret's eyes sparkled with recognition. "My Sabrina," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I knew you would come." In that moment, Sabrina felt a flicker of hope. She shared her new job opportunity, leaving out the painful details of her homelessness and her parents' rejection. "Thanks to Eleanor," she said, her voice steady. "She always told you, you make your own way." The warmth of her grandmother's hand reminded her that love could still exist, even amidst chaos. But as she left the hospital, the question lingered. Could she truly reclaim her independence and heal from the betrayal that had haunted her for so long? The road ahead was uncertain, but Sabrina was ready to fight for her place in the world. Would she find the unconditional love she craved, or would the shadows of her family's past continue to loom over her? The journey was just beginning, and she was determined to carve out her own path. In the early morning hours, she asked me to retrieve a small box from her purse that Nancy had brought to the hospital. Inside was a key and a folded document. "My will," she explained softly. "House is yours, always meant for you." I tried to object to tell her she would recover and return home, but she shook her head. "Listen now," she said, her voice surprisingly firm despite her weakness. "You have the spirit, the strength. Brian has your parents. You need roots." 2 days later, Grandma Margaret passed away peacefully in her sleep, her hand in mine. Through my grief, I had to navigate the practical matters of her passing. The hospital contacted my parents, who arrived for the funeral arrangements, looking appropriately somber but largely uninvolved in the details. During the reading of the will, their demeanor changed dramatically. Grandma Margaret had indeed left her cottage and savings to me, with only small mementos going to my mother and Brian. My father's face darkened with anger, and my mother burst into tears. "Mother always favored you. She accused me after the lawyer left. Even though you barely visited in recent years, I did not have the energy to explain that financial constraints, not lack of care, had limited my visits. Instead, I thanked the lawyer, collected the keys to my grandmother's house, and began the process of moving into my unexpected inheritance. The cottage needed work. It had been well maintained but reflected my grandmother's 85 years in its decor and appliances. Still, it was mine, a home no one could take from me. Eleanor helped me move in, bringing necessities from her apartment and spending a weekend helping me clean. "It has good bones," she declared as we scrubbed the kitchen and amazing natural light for a home office. For the first time in months, I fell asleep feeling safe and with a sense of possibility. In my grandmother's garden, now overgrown but still beautiful, I could almost hear her voice. A knock shatters the stillness of Sabrina's evening. She's about to brush paint on a window frame when a thick envelope slips under the door. The scent of rain mingles with fresh primer, tension crackling in the air. Inside, legal documents, unexpectedly from Grandma Margaret herself. The will isn't what she was told. Sabrina's hands tremble as she reads. Somewhere upstairs the floor creaks, as if the house is ready to spill its secrets. You see, Sabrina had always been the resilient one, determined to carve her own path. After Grandma Margaret's passing, she inherited not just a cottage but a chance to reclaim her independence. The house, a sanctuary from her family's betrayal, became her canvas. With a steady job and a vision, she transformed the small front room into a home office, investing in design equipment that reflected her spirit. But the cottage was more than just a project. It was a lifeline. Each room she painted, each fixture she replaced, whispered stories of her grandmother's love. The garden, once overgrown, became her weekend therapy. She dove into books and videos, nurturing the plants back to life, finding solace in the dirt beneath her nails. Living in a small town after the chaos of her family felt daunting. At first, she kept to herself, still raw from rejection. But small towns have a way of pulling you in. Mrs. Jenkins next door brought over a casserole, welcoming her home. Tom from the hardware store set aside vintage doorknobs, knowing they'd match the cottage's charm. Then came Patrick Lewis, the bookstore owner. "You're going to wear that design book out," he teased one day, watching her browse for the umpteenth time. "Why not just buy it already?" With each connection, Sabrina felt the walls of her isolation crumble. 6 months in, she had her first real friend. The warmth of community began to fill the void left by her family's betrayal. But just as she started to feel at home, the envelope's contents loomed over her. What did Grandma Margaret really intend? The tension hung heavy, a storm brewing on the horizon. Would she find the unconditional love she craved, or would the shadows of her past pull her back into darkness? As she stood in the garden, the rain began to fall, washing away the remnants of doubt. She was ready to face whatever came next. After all, she was building her own shelter, one brushstroke at a time. "Budget constraints," I admitted with a smile. I am renovating bit by bit. The next day when I came in, the book was wrapped in brown paper behind the counter with a note. Renovation consultant fee. Your coffee wisdom has improved our menu, Patrick. We became friends through books and coffee, sharing recommendations and eventually meals. Patrick was easy to talk to with none of the judgment I had grown accustomed to from my family. When I finally told him the full story of how I had ended up in town, he listened without interruption. Your parents sound like real pieces of work was his only comment when I finished their loss. As my design skills and client list grew, I decided to take a risk. Using my savings, I launched my own small design studio, Elevation Designs, focusing on branding for small businesses. My experience at Michael's company had shown me that many local businesses struggled with their visual identity, but could not afford large agency fees. I started with a website and business cards, then began approaching local shops and restaurants. My first client was Patrick, who needed a new logo and signage for the bookstore. From there, word spread. Within a year, I had enough regular clients to leave my position with Michael, though we maintained a collaborative relationship, referring clients to each other. As my business grew, so did my investment in the cottage. I replaced the aging roof, updated the ancient heating system, and renovated the kitchen with modern appliances while keeping the charming cabinets Grandma Margaret had loved. The property value increased substantially with each improvement, but that was secondary to creating a home that honored her while reflecting my own style. The garden flourished under my increasingly knowledgeable care. I added a small patio where I could work outdoors on pleasant days and a fire pit for evening relaxation. Patrick often joined me there, bringing books he thought I would enjoy and listening to my ideas for new projects. By the 5-year anniversary of Grandma Margaret's passing, my life had transformed completely. Elevation Designs had 3 employees besides myself, operating from a converted garage on my property. I had established myself in the community, joining the Small Business Association, and even helping organize the annual Arts Festival. My relationship with Patrick had deepened into something more than friendship, though we were taking things slowly, both valuing our independence. My circle of friends included Eleanor and Michael, who visited regularly, and a growing network of local connections. I had not spoken to my parents or Brian since the funeral. Occasionally, I would receive a Christmas card with no personal message, just their printed names. I sent similar impersonal cards in return, unwilling to sever the last thread completely, but protecting myself from further hurt. The cottage, once my grandmother's haven, had become my own sanctuary and success story. The girl who had once slept in her car now owned a debt-free home, ran a profitable business, and had created a life filled with meaningful connections. I had done exactly what Grandma Margaret believed I could do. Built my own shelter, both physically and emotionally. What I did not realize was that my hard-won peace was about to be shattered by the very people who had once turned me away. The first sign came in the form of an email from Brian on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Seeing his name in my inbox after 5 years of silence made my coffee taste suddenly bitter. The subject line read, Diane's voice, syrupy yet strained, echoed through the phone. Sabrina, it's so good to hear from you. But before she could finish, Richard's booming authority cut in. We need to talk about Brian's promotion and his upcoming wedding. Sabrina's heart sank. This wasn't a heartfelt reunion. It was a summons. She felt like a prop, pulled from the shelf only when needed. The realization hit her hard. She was never really gone, just waiting in the wings for the next family event. The scent of rain wafted through her open window, mingling with the bitterness in her chest. You want me there for a show, not for love, she thought, the leaf rustle outside mirroring her inner turmoil. Family is important, Richard insisted, his tone dismissive, but to Sabrina, it felt like a power play, a way to enforce his version of family. You've always been part of this legacy, he continued, but his words felt like chains, not comfort. Diane chimed in, her voice soft but distant. We just want to reconnect, Sabrina. It's been too long." "Reconnect?" Sabrina echoed, her voice trembling. "Is that what you call abandoning me when I needed you most?" A heavy silence hung in the air, thick with unspoken truths. She could almost hear the clock ticking, each second a reminder of the years lost. "Everyone makes mistakes," Diane finally said, her tone shifting to a defensive whisper. "We were struggling, too." Struggling, Sabrina thought, her mind racing. They had chosen their path, leaving her to fend for herself. "Your father and I are proud of you," Diane added, but the words felt like a hollow echo of the past. Sabrina took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "Proud? You didn't even reach out when I was homeless." Richard's voice boomed again. "We're here now. That's what matters." But to Sabrina, it was clear. They were here for their own convenience, not for her healing. The emotional distance felt insurmountable, a chasm filled with years of hurt and betrayal. As she hung up, the rain began to fall, each drop a reminder of her journey. She had built a life from the ashes of their rejection, and now she would not let them pull her back into their narrative. Sabrina was ready to reclaim her story, to find the unconditional love she had always sought. The battle for her independence was just beginning, and she would fight for it fiercely. "We should focus on rebuilding our relationship now." Something in her tone struck me as rehearsed, as if she had practiced this conversation. I agreed to think about a visit without committing to dates, then ended the call as quickly as possible. That evening, I received another call, this time from Brian. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hey, sis," he said with forced cheer. "Mom said you two spoke. It is great that we are all reconnecting." "What is going on, Brian?" I asked directly. "Why the sudden family reunion interest after 5 years?" He laughed, the sound slightly strained. "Cannot a brother want to reconnect with his sister? But since you asked, things have been challenging lately." Over the next 20 minutes, Brian revealed the family situation. He had made several poor investment decisions, losing most of his savings and accumulating significant debt. Our father had been forced into early retirement from the bank after an internal investigation found irregularities in his management practices. While he avoided criminal charges, his reputation was ruined. Our mother had developed back problems that prevented her from working full shifts at the hospital. "We have had to downsize significantly," Brian explained. "The condo was foreclosed and Mom and Dad had to sell the house. They are in a small apartment now. I'm sorry to hear that I said genuinely meaning it despite everything." "That must be difficult." "Yeah. Well, family has to stick together in tough times, right?" The irony of his statement seemed lost on him. "Anyway, we were thinking we could come visit next weekend, get to know your town, see Grandma's old place, reconnect." I reluctantly agreed to a Saturday lunch, setting clear boundaries that it would be a brief visit, not an overnight stay. After hanging up, I called Patrick. "They are coming Saturday," I told him, "and from what Brian said, they are in financial trouble. Want me to be there?" Patrick offered moral support. Sabrina's heart raced as the tension in the room thickened. The air felt electric, charged with unspoken questions. Her father's gaze bore into Brian, a battle of uncertainty and control flickering in his eyes. The kitchen clock ticked louder, each second stretching the silence. Brian leaned against the doorway, a smirk playing on his lips while their mother clutched her purse, her expression unreadable. Sabrina sensed the weight of past grievances colliding with new alliances. Then her father's voice sliced through the stillness. "What exactly are your intentions here?" The answer, Sabrina realized, could change everything. The day had started with a simple family reunion, but it quickly spiraled into something much darker. As they gathered in her cozy cottage, Sabrina felt the familiar pang of betrayal. Her father, once a towering figure of authority, now seemed diminished, his stern demeanor cracking under the weight of their family's unraveling. Her mother's tear-filled eyes betrayed a lifetime of emotional distance, while Brian, the favored son, reveled in the chaos, his privileged status unchallenged. "Seems like your little design business is doing well," her father remarked, his tone dismissive. Sabrina felt the sting of his words, a reminder of the independence she fought so hard to reclaim. Patrick, her steadfast ally, chimed in, "Sabrina has clients across 3 states now." The pride in his voice contrasted sharply with her father's narrowed eyes, revealing the power struggle simmering beneath the surface. Lunch was a minefield of compliments laced with barbs. Her mother mentioned their cramped apartment 3 times, each mention a reminder of their family's decline. Brian, ever the opportunist, casually snapped photos of the cottage, his intentions cloaked in feigned interest. "Getting good reception here," he said, a hint of something more sinister lurking beneath his casual tone. After they left, Sabrina felt a wave of nausea wash over her. "Did you notice your brother taking pictures of every room?" Patrick asked, loading the dishwasher. The sick feeling in her stomach deepened. Her father's probing questions about property values echoed in her mind, a reminder of the imbalance that had always existed in their family. As the rain began to fall outside, the scent of wet earth filled the air, mingling with the tension still lingering in the cottage. Sabrina knew this was just the beginning. The stakes were higher than ever, and the battle for her independence was far from over. Would she find the strength to confront her family's dysfunction, or would she be swept away in their tide of betrayal? The answer loomed just out of reach, waiting to be uncovered. "They are planning something," Patrick said, stating what we both knew. "Be careful, Sabrina." The following week brought daily calls from my family. My mother wanted recipes I had served at lunch. My father had questions about the heating system. Brian wondered if I had the original deed from Grandma Margaret. Each conversation felt like a probe, testing for vulnerabilities. The truth became clear during their second visit 2 weeks later. As we sat in the garden, my father broached the subject directly. "Sabrina, your mother and I have been thinking. This house has 3 bedrooms and you are just one person. We are struggling in that tiny apartment. It would make sense for us to move in here. A family home should house a family." I stared at him momentarily, speechless. "This is my home," I finally said. "I inherited it from grandmother." "Yes, but surely she intended it to benefit the whole family," my mother interjected. "She would not have wanted us struggling while you have all this space. Actually, she specifically left it to me because she knew I would care for it properly," I responded, anger rising, "and because she knew I was the only one who truly appreciated it." "Well, regardless of her intentions," my father said dismissively, "we are family. We should support each other. Brian could take the room above the garage and your mother and I would take the master bedroom." "That is my office," I said incredulously, "where I run my business. You could move your little computer to the dining room," my mother suggested, as if solving a simple problem. "It would be a much more efficient use of the space." "This is not happening," I stated firmly. "I am sorry for your situation, but you cannot move in here." The conversation deteriorated from there, with my father becoming increasingly insistent, and my mother alternating between guilt trips and passive-aggressive comments. Brian remained suspiciously quiet, typing on his phone throughout the argument. The soft clang of a message alert cuts through the evening buzz. Sabrina's heart skips a beat. Mrs. Jenkins rarely texts at night. Hazy city lights blur into worry as she reads, "Call me as soon as you can. Something's happening at the house." Who could be there when she's hundreds of miles away? After they left, Sabrina felt a storm brewing. She immediately called her lawyer, the one who had handled Grandma Margaret's will. "Everything is in order," he assured her. "The house is solely in your name. They have no legal claim." But deep down, she sensed this confrontation was far from over. 3 weeks later, she was off to a design conference in Boston. It was a chance to connect with potential clients and learn about industry trends. Patrick, her friend, offered to check on the house, but he was busy with his bookstore. On the second night, while mingling at a reception, her phone buzzed. It was Mrs. Jenkins. Thought you were away until tomorrow. Saw lights on in your house. Everything okay?" Panic surged through Sabrina. "I'm still in Boston. There shouldn't be anyone there." "Oh dear," Mrs. Jenkins replied, her concern palpable. "Should I call the police?" "No, let me check my security cameras first," Sabrina said, trying to keep her voice steady. She opened the security app, her fingers trembling. The footage revealed her father's car in the driveway. 3 figures were unloading boxes and suitcases. Sabrina's breath caught in her throat. She watched in disbelief as her father forced the back door open, letting her mother and Brian inside. Betrayal washed over her like a cold wave. She called Patrick, her voice shaking. "They're breaking into my house. They're moving in while I'm gone." "I'll drive over right now," he promised. "Should I call the police?" he asked. "Not yet," she replied, still reeling from the shock. "Let me try calling them first." What would she say? How could she confront the very people who were supposed to support her? The weight of betrayal pressed down on her, and she knew this was just the beginning. Would she be able to reclaim her home, her independence, and her sense of belonging? I called my father's cell phone, my heart racing as I watched the camera feed. He glanced at the screen, then declined my call. I tried my mother and Brian, but got the same cold silence. Finally, I dialed the landline I had installed in the cottage. After several rings, Brian answered, his voice dripping with casual indifference. "Hello, Wilson residence." "What the hell are you doing in my house?" I demanded, my voice trembling with fury. There was a pause, then a sigh. "Sabrina, we were going to call you tomorrow. We're just getting settled in." "Settled in? You broke into my house. You're trespassing." "Don't be dramatic," he shot back, cool as ice. "This is a family home. We are family. Besides, you don't need all this space just for yourself." In the background, I heard my father's voice, muffled but unmistakable. "Tell her we will discuss it when she returns. The decision has been made." My fists clenched around the phone. "You need to leave right now," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I'm calling the police if you're not out of my house in 30 minutes. Brian's tone hardened. "That would be a mistake, Sabrina. We have nowhere else to go. Calling the police on your own family would be cruel. Mom and Dad have the real family connection to this house, not you." "It's my house, Brian. Grandma left it to me." He dismissed my claim with a wave of his hand. "A technicality. We've already spoken to a lawyer about challenging the will. Grandma was old and not entirely competent when she made those arrangements. We have a good case for overturning it." A chill ran down my spine. I knew they had no legal ground, but the thought of a court battle loomed over me like a dark cloud. I ended the call, my mind racing. I booked a flight home for the next morning, missing the final day of the conference. When I landed, Patrick was waiting for me, his face grim. "They're still there," he said quietly. "I went by this morning. Your father answered the door and told me it was a family matter and to mind my own business." The weight of betrayal pressed down on me. Would I really have to fight my own family for my home? What would I find when I returned? The scent of rain lingered in the air, a reminder that storms were brewing, both outside and within. The smell of cinnamon rolls baking in the old kitchen wafted through the sunlight, wrapping Sabrina in a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Her grandmother's hands, soft, flour-dusted, guided her through braiding dough, laughter echoing through the cramped space. Sabrina could almost taste the moment, sweetness tangled with a hint of longing. But that memory flickered as her father's voice cut through the comfort, shattering the sanctuary. That kitchen was hers once. It was the only place she ever belonged. "That's not how property ownership works," Patrick interjected, his voice steady. Sabrina's father turned to him with a glare. "This does not concern you. This is between family." "Patrick is more family to me than any of you have been," Sabrina replied, her heart racing. "He didn't abandon me when I was homeless and desperate." "Ancient history," Brian waved dismissively. "We're here now, ready to be a family again." "After you've depleted your resources and need something from me," Sabrina shot back. "This isn't about family. This is about you wanting my house." "We will take this house," her father stated flatly, dropping all pretense. "One way or another. We've already spoken to a lawyer about our options." "Your non-existent options," Sabrina corrected, her voice steady. "The house is legally mine." He smirked. "But we have documented evidence of your grandmother's declining mental state. As her direct descendants, we have a strong case for rightful inheritance." Sabrina knew he was bluffing, but the confrontation had gone far enough. Without another word, she took out her phone and dialed 911. "What are you doing?" her mother demanded, eyes wide with disbelief. "Calling the police to report trespassers in my home," Sabrina replied calmly. "We are not trespassers. We are your family," her mother shrieked, desperation lacing her voice. "Family does not break into each other's homes," Sabrina said as the dispatcher answered. She reported the situation, providing her address and explaining that people had entered her home without permission and were refusing to leave. Her father lunged for the phone, but Patrick stepped between them. "Do not make this worse," he warned. The 15 minutes it took for the police to arrive felt like an eternity. When 2 officers knocked on the door, Sabrina opened it, her heart pounding. She explained the situation, showing them her identification and the deed to the property. "These people entered my home without permission while I was out of town," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "They damaged my back door lock to gain entry and have refused to leave." As the officers listened, Sabrina felt a flicker of hope. Would she finally reclaim her space? Would she find the strength to stand against the very people who should have supported her? The scent of rain hung in the air, a reminder of the storm brewing, both inside this house and within her heart. Sabrina stood at the center of chaos, her heart pounding as the police intervened. Her father, with his iron grip on family dynamics, argued with a voice that dripped disdain. "This is a family disagreement," he insisted, trying to twist the narrative. The older officer's response was a cold splash of reality. "If you do not have legal residence here and the homeowner wants you to leave, you need to leave." The words hung thick in the air as fragile hopes cracked like brittle glass. "Ridiculous," he barked, flinging out entitlement like a shield. "She is my daughter." "That doesn't give you the right to enter her property without permission," the officer countered, unwavering. "You have 30 minutes to collect your immediate belongings," he continued, offering a lifeline in this storm of betrayal. Sabrina felt a rush of vindication as her family gathered under police watch, their sense of superiority stripped away. Then her mother approached, tears brimming, a flicker of humanity. "How could you do this to your own parents?" she lamented. Sabrina held her gaze, steady and fierce. "The same way you turned away your daughter when I had nowhere else to go." Security footage laid bare their transgressions. The police, stern and professional, guided her through the process of obtaining a restraining order. One day later, her lawyer filed the paperwork, and within a week, the temporary order was granted. As the officers escorted her parents out, a swirl of emotions raged within. The raw pain of betrayal weighed against the bubbling anger over their entitlement, and yet there was also triumph in standing firm against manipulation and emotional abuse. That night, after locking down her home with newfound security, she sat on the porch swing, the one her grandmother adored, with Patrick beside her. "You did the right thing," he reassured her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders like a warm embrace. "I know," she murmured, her eyes glued to the first stars breaking through the twilight sky. "It just shouldn't have had to come to this." The legal battle stretched over several months, each step driven by a newfound strength. As evidence mounted, the temporary restraining order morphed into a permanent fixture in her life. There, in that small victory, she slowly began to reclaim her space, her life, and most importantly, herself. The kitchen was alive with a silence only broken by the drop of a thick envelope onto the worn table. Sabrina's heart raced as the familiar scent of her mother's perfume enveloped her, a bittersweet echo from the past. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside lay a handwritten letter, its words heavy with regret and the admission of a love that had long been suffocated by silence. Could this be her mother's way of changing the rules of their fractured relationship? The tension of years spilled into the air, mingling with her anger, softening it just for a moment. 3 weeks passed after that courtroom battle, a treacherous fight against betrayal, but the air still felt charged. Text messages snatched from Brian's phone unfurled a sinister plot. They had intended to move in during her absence, ready to play the victims if she dared to evict them. How could they scheme in the shadow of their own wrongdoing? Her father and Brian faced minor charges, their egos bruised, yet they still insisted they were right. Family property should be shared, they hissed, dismissing her claims. But Sabrina felt the scales tipping, a newfound strength emerging as her lawyer unveiled Grandma Margaret's medical records. Their claim of duress fell apart, like dust scattering in the wind. Then the unexpected happened. Her mother sent a letter that cut through Sabrina's defenses. "I do not expect forgiveness," it started, laced with insincerity she had never felt before. "We failed you, not just now, but throughout your life." Tears pricked at Sabrina's eyes. Could she really trust this shift, or was it just another layer of manipulation? Thoughts swirled as she forged her response. A brief acknowledgement, but no promises of reconciliation. Trust is delicate. When shattered, it takes time to heal. Life began anew with the support of a therapist specializing in family trauma. The weekly sessions became her sanctuary, a place where confrontations with her past led her to understanding that boundaries were essential for her healing. The shared stories from those in the support group enveloped her, revealing that her struggle was part of a much bigger narrative. Family bonds aren't solely defined by blood. They're made of respect, love, and, most importantly, truth. Sabrina stood at the edge of a new chapter, resolute in her independence and shaped by her scars. Would she find the unconditional love she so desperately craved? Time would tell, but this journey was hers to claim, one step toward liberation at a time. My therapist often reminded me that true family is defined by love, respect, and support. This truth hit home as I reflected on who had always been there for me. Patrick, whose steadfast presence had become my rock. Eleanor, who reached out when I was at my lowest. Even the neighbors and fellow small business owners welcoming me without judgment. Through this storm, my bond with Patrick deepened. He stood by me during the family crisis, showing me what real partnership means. On the first anniversary of that fateful break-in, he proposed in Grandma Margaret's garden, a place now bursting with the vibrant perennials I had planted in her memory. "You deserve a family who sees your worth," he said, presenting a simple but elegant ring. "I would be honored to start that family with you." 6 months later, we exchanged vows in that same garden. Eleanor was by my side as my maid of honor, while Michael stood proudly with Patrick. My parents and Brian? Not invited. That boundary safeguarded our joy, ensuring our day was filled with love, not conflict. I was surrounded by the family I had chosen, people who had proven their love through actions, not just blood ties. As life settled into this refreshing new normal, I began to think about how to transform my painful past into something meaningful. The cottage, once a battleground, turned into a sanctuary, not just for me but for others in need. Inspired by Grandma Margaret's spirit, I established a small foundation in her name, offering temporary housing and career mentorship to young adults facing homelessness due to family rejection. Everyone deserves a safe place to land, I shared with the local paper at the foundation's launch, and everyone deserves the chance to build their own success story. The first recipient, Jaime, was a 22-year-old graphic design student whose parents cut her off the moment she changed her major from business to art. Her story mirrored my own, full of resilience and hope. In every heartwarming success story, I saw fragments of my journey. Each young adult who found shelter at the cottage echoed my own fight for independence and acceptance. Together, we were creating a community built on accountability, respect, and, most importantly, love. Would I find the unconditional love I longed for? Yes, right here, amidst the vibrant blooms in Grandma's garden. It wasn't just about healing from betrayal. It was about building a legacy of true belonging. The parallels to Diane's journey truly struck a chord. I offered her the apartment above the garage, now a cozy living space, and an internship at Elevation Designs. Watching her confidence bloom reminded me of my own hard-fought journey. 5 years after being abandoned by my biological family, I had forged something far stronger than the ties that once failed me. I built a home, a thriving business, a loving marriage, and a purpose that honored Grandma Margaret's enduring belief in me, extending that same support to others. Occasionally, I received updates about my parents and Brian from mutual acquaintances. My father never acknowledged his wrongdoing, insisting I was the selfish one. And Brian? He moved to another state, starting fresh after his financial missteps. As for my mother, she had separated from Dad and was attempting to reclaim her independence. It hinted that she'd gleaned something from our family's collapse, a flicker of hope. The door to reconciliation lingered, but it came with conditions that demanded my self-worth be respected. Any relationship now required genuine mutual respect, not convenience or obligation. Until that day arrived, I poured my energy into nurturing the healthy connections I had forged. On quiet evenings in Grandma Margaret's garden with Patrick by my side, I often reflected on my journey, from homeless to homeowner, abandoned daughter to community champion. I learned that family isn't merely a birthright, it's a privilege forged through love and respect. I shared with the support group during my closing session. Sometimes, having no family is far better than being tied to those who hurt you. Creating your own family of choice is not only possible, it's often more fulfilling than clinging to toxic blood ties. The cottage my grandmother entrusted to me transformed into something greater than just a house. It became living proof that I deserved to carve out space in this world, that my dreams and boundaries truly mattered. The sweet scent of blooming flowers filled the air, mingling with the comforting warmth of new beginnings. Here, I wasn't just healing from betrayal. I was building a legacy of true belonging and love, where every bloom echoed the resilience of my journey. Rain pounded against the windows, a relentless rhythm that matched the storm brewing inside Sabrina. She stood in the living room, fists unclenching, heart racing. Richard's glare faltered, a crack in his authoritarian facade. Diane's lips trembled, caught between loyalty and fairness. Brian. He retreated upstairs, the favored son, oblivious to the chaos below. The silence was thick, almost suffocating, but for Sabrina, it was a moment of clarity. A weight lifted, tension snapping like a frayed wire. The scent of wet earth drifted in, mingling with the bittersweet taste of freedom. She smiled, a quiet triumph. She had chosen her own peace. Have you ever felt the need to defend your worth against those who should love you? Or found strength in a chosen family when your own let you down? Share your stories in the comments. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is far more precious than the one we're born into.